Welcome to the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie. After learning a ton about kidney stones and helping people prevent stones at the University of Chicago, I was fed up with all the terrible advice people were finding online. So I decided to do something about it. The Kidney Dietitian was born. This podcast is for people who want to learn what actually works to prevent kidney stones and still enjoy life, eating, and their favorite foods. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the 60th episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie. And today we have a little bit of a different type of episode, but I think it is an important point to talk about whenever you're talking about healthcare, and with my goal of trying to make kidney stone prevention a more common and discussed topic. We have to talk about money because money speaks, or money talks, right? Whatever the saying is. And so I just wanted to kind of give you some interesting statistics, I think, of how expensive and costly kidney stones really are. Because I think the numbers are quite astonishing. And so hopefully you find this type of thing as interesting as I do. So the first thing is that makes kidney stones so costly to us as a society as a whole is that they are obviously unbelievably common and the recurrence rate is unbelievably high. So of course it's really hard to track the exact prevalence of kidney stones because we only know if someone has a kidney stone if it passes, right? And they have pain, or if they happen to get a scan that reveals that they have a kidney stone. So the most estimates are around 10% of the population in the United States will have a kidney stone that we know of at some point in their life. But I always say that I think it would be fascinating, although obviously not feasible or ethical whatsoever, to go around and scan every single person in the U.S. to see what the actual prevalence is of kidney stones, because we know that it's likely way higher than that, right? Like there's probably many people, probably millions of people who have stones just hanging out in their kidneys and we literally never know about them, right? Like, again, you can have a kidney stone in your kidney or multiple kidney stones in your kidney for a really long time and they don't cause any issues. And so you wouldn't even know to go see a urologist or get a kidney ultrasound or CT or anything like that. So I just think that's always a fascinating point to point out. But the best estimate that we have of known kidney stones is somewhere around 10% of the U.S. population, which is huge. Like that is 1 in 10 people will have a kidney stone at some point in their life. It's massive. And it's fascinating to me that kidney stones are not seen as big of a health crisis as something like diabetes or heart disease or kidney disease. Not saying that kidney disease and heart disease and diabetes are not important, because they absolutely are. But I would say kidney stones is potentially up there on the list, should be up there on those lists of diseases that are like, plaguing our nation. Because honestly, kidney stones are more common than a lot of those conditions. So point is, it's a lot of people. And of course, I always talk about kidney stones as being more of a chronic disease. I think that's the other shift in language that I would love to see in kidney stones in healthcare, is that a kidney stone isn't just a kidney stone. Like when we see a kidney stone on someone's past medical history, we shouldn't just think like, oh, okay, cool, they had a stone, like whatever. Like that is a sign that something is wrong. People don't just form stones, right? Something happened or something is going on that made that person form a stone. And so really, it's really more of this kidney stone disease, not just a history of kidney stones, right? Because that recurrence rate is so high. So estimates are very difficult to come by, but I've seen estimates. Most commonly, we hear the statistic that if you have one kidney stone, there's about a 50% chance that you'll have another one at some point in your life. And I've seen estimates as high as 75%. So both numbers way too high, right? If you have just one stone, there's a chance that you have a very high chance, a 50 to 75% risk that you'll have another one at some point in your life, which is, again, one of the reasons why I am so passionate about stone prevention, which is unfortunately just not part of standard medical care for kidney stones. Most people just get their stones themselves treated, which is super important. Again, Don't get me wrong. Getting that stone out of you, if it's causing you pain or other issues, is obviously super, super important. And we want to invest all sorts of money and research into figuring out the best ways to get rid of that stone safely, effectively, without causing side effects and other issues. That is so, so important. But I think we also need to put just as much money and time and energy into figuring out how to stop people from getting these again and again and again, because that recurrence rate is so high. And unfortunately, that is just not the state of what healthcare is, or where the time and money and research has been. Most of it has been in the sort of the urology side of things, not the preventative side of things. So anyway, I'll get back on topic. I always get a little bit on a soapbox when I talk about these types of things, because it's just so important. Like, this is exactly why I do what I do, is to educate the world, people with kidney stones and other healthcare providers, about kidney stones in general and how important it is to think about prevention at all to reduce that risk of recurrence. And also just how to do it effectively, right? Because the knowledge of how to do it effectively is just unfortunately not there, because it's not part of standard medical training for either urologists or dietitians or nephrologists for that matter. So back to the numbers. So these kidney stones are super common. So unsurprisingly, they cost the medical system and our society a astonishing amount of money. So kidney stones in 2009 accounted for 1.3 million emergency room visits. That is astonishing. 1.3 million ER visits. And we know that ER visits are incredibly expensive. In every single medical condition that I'm aware of, if we can prevent it, it's going to be way more cost effective than having someone show up in the ER, because the ER is always going to be the most expensive, least effective way to treat someone. And unfortunately, just because of the nature of kidney stones and how they can kind of just pop up out of nowhere, kidney stones account for a lot of ER visits specifically. If you break it down, that actually ends up being about 3,600 ER visits a day. And that's just so many. Like, it's just, there's just so many people that could use kidney stone dietitians' help. And also of note, that was way back in 2009. All of these numbers are a bit outdated, but it's the most recent data that I could find. And I know that kidney stones have increased since then. So I have to imagine that ER visits have also increased. This particular study, which I'll cite in the show notes, so you can go check it out if you're at all interested, of course, in reading the whole thing. This particular study, that between 2005 and 2009, ER visits increased by 20% in just that 4-year time period, and hospitalizations increased about 14%. So that's huge, like 20% increase in just 4 years. Like, that is nutty. And also of note, I thought it was interesting that about 20% of ER visits for kidney stones results in a hospitalization. So there's about a 1 in 4-ish% chance that if you show up to the ER with a kidney stone, you're going to have to be hospitalized, which of course is miserable for the patient, but also accounts for a lot of the cost. So everything, when we think about kidney stones and how much they cost our society, cost people in the United States, it's about $5 billion annually. That is 5 with a B, billion dollars. That is so many dollars. And that includes both direct cost and indirect cost. So the direct cost of kidney stones being those actual ER visits, medications to help you pass kidney stones, or pain medications to help you manage the pain of passing a kidney stone, the actual surgery, right? So the actual surgeon's time and all the equipment and nurse time and right, all of that stuff is included in kidney stone treatment. That is a lot of money. And that 5 billion number also includes indirect costs. So this is things like lost work days, which I feel like is oftentimes one of the most things you think about when we think of indirect costs, right? So kidney stones, as I'm sure that most of my listeners understand very, very well, when you pass a kidney stone, you can't do much. You can't go to work. And so that costs our society a lot as well. So it's estimated in this paper that just kidney stones account for 3.1 million lost work days per year, which is equivalent to an estimated $775 million per year. So let me say that again. That was a lot of numbers. So just kidney stones account for an estimated 3.1 million lost work days per year, which is equivalent to about $775 million per year. Again, guys, these numbers are just astonishing. And then whenever I read papers like this, I wanted to do this podcast episode because I was preparing for some some presentations that I'm giving at the American Society of Nephrology this fall about kidney stone nutrition to doctors, which I'm super pumped about. But anyway, I came across this paper again. I've read it before, but it just like when I read these numbers, it's just astonishing to me, like the amount of money that is put into kidney stone treatment. And I always just think like, man, how much money would we save as a society if we actually focused on kidney stone prevention, which is so cheap, right? The cost of seeing a dietitian, taking my course, working with one of my dietitians on my team, seeing a nephrologist, taking a medication, whatever makes sense for you based on your 24-hour urine test. Of course, we want to get that 24-hour urine test to make sure we're not just doing everything for everyone. We want to make sure that we are providing targeted, effective prevention. We would save millions. And not to say like, I feel kind of slimy that I'm just talking about money here, but like, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, like money talks, right? Like when we think about healthcare, unfortunately, it is a business and we have to prove that whatever we're doing is going to save money. But that is why one of the reasons why prevention is so amazing is because it's so much cheaper, right? It's so much cheaper to stop someone from having a heart attack than it is to treat them if they have a heart attack, in addition to the obvious benefit to that patient's life, right? Like, or just with kidney stones, the obvious benefit that we could have on people's lives if we actually gave them effective stone prevention instead of just waiting for them to form a stone and then having them go to the ER and then being in the hospital for a couple of days and then having to do tremendously expensive stone surgeries or stone removals and these types of things, right? We're going to save so much money and we're also going to massively improve people's lives, which I would like to think is our number one goal, but unfortunately money also has to be considered as well. So some interesting numbers. I tried to figure out like how much is a stone surgery, right? Like how much is a nephrolithotomy? And of course, trying to figure out these numbers is basically impossible because it is so different based on where you get your care, where you are in the United States. Of course, it's going to be drastically different in different countries and those types of things. I did find, I don't know how legit this is, but I did find a website called MD Save that I could at least find an estimated a cost of some different procedures. So take these numbers with a ginormous grain of salt because, again, figuring out how much things actually cost in the U.S. healthcare system is basically impossible. But I found, according to this one website, that the U.S. average for a nephrolithotomy, so that is the actual stone surgery, right? Like when there's an actual incision and they go in and get out usually very large stones, is somewhere around $24,000. And that's for just one surgery, right? And there's obviously millions of these going on every year. And lithotripsy, which is much more common, is still quite expensive, with an estimated $15,500 per surgery. And again, there are so many thousands of surgeries going on in the U.S. all the time, right? And so again, I just like, this is why prevention is so important. And this is why I do what I do. It saves us money. And most important, it improves lives. It improves quality of life. In addition to, right, just imagine if you could spend $600, say, for maybe a kidney stone prevention course, and you could save yourself all of this money that you're going to save on potentially, multiple surgeries, in addition to the obvious pain and stress and anxiety of going through surgery and being in the hospital and all of those good things, and the obvious pain of passing a kidney stone. Like, prevention is just where it is at, and that is why I do what I do. So I will close this episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. And I know this one was a little bit different, but I felt the urge to record a podcast about this since I came across that paper as I was preparing for this presentation, because I just think the numbers are astonishing. As always, if you have questions that you would like me to tackle on the podcast, I would love to hear from you. I think doing listener questions are my favorite kind of episode. So please, please, please let me know if you have a question. If you just head to kidneystonepodcast.com, you can record your question for a chance to get answered on the podcast. And again, I would love to hear from you. Just head to kidneystonepodcast.com. That concludes this episode of the podcast. I hope to see you next week. New episodes of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast drop every single Wednesday at midnight Eastern. So hopefully I'll see you then. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more help with kidney stones, check out my website, www.thekidneydietitian.org. For more personalized help from me, check out my online course, Kidney Stone Nutrition School. VIP enrollment includes help directly from me. I can't wait to see you there and help you prevent kidney stones. Have a great day.